The sound of the metal door closing echoed through the long, empty hallway like thunder in a cave. The noise faded slowly, leaving only silence, heavy, lonely silence. Eliara sat on the cold floor of her small cell. The air was damp and full of dust. A single thin beam of blue light came from a vent near the ceiling. Barely enough to show the shape of her hands. She was human, and the only human left, alive in this part of the galaxy. 3 moons ago, Eliara had come to the alien planet Corin V as part of a peace research mission. She studied alien biology, trying to find a cure for a deadly infection spreading across the nearby colonies. She believed that if humans and aliens worked together, they could save millions. But the Empire of Corin did not like humans. They said humans were too emotional, too unpredictable. They feared what kindness might do to their control. Then the fire happened, one night. An explosion ripped through the northern nursery wing of the fortress. The flames spread fast, walls melting, air thick with smoke. Eliara ran toward the screams instead of away from them. She found 3 small alien cubs trapped under fallen metal, their fur burned. Their eyes wide with fear, without thinking. She lifted the burning debris, wrapped them in her jacket, and carried them through the fire. She didn't care about orders, danger, or the soldiers shouting at her to stop. When the cubs were safe, she collapsed beside them, coughing black smoke. The next morning, the cubs were taken to heal. Eliara was taken to a prison cell. They said she had interfered with natural selection. She had shown weakness. She had broken the wall between species. And for that, the Empire locked her underground, far below the fortress. Deep in the stone belly of the mountain. Now, days passed slowly in darkness. Eliara didn't know how long she had been there. Maybe weeks, maybe months. Her food was pushed through a small slot twice a day. She rarely saw anyone, except the silent guard who never spoke, but she still hummed. Every night, when the lights dimmed, she sang softly to herself, an old earth lullaby her mother once sang. The melody echoed through the vents, through the stones. It was her way of reminding herself she was still human. She never knew that someone was listening. Far above the cell, in the upper dens of the fortress, 3 young aliens huddled together in the shadows of a storage room. Their fur had grown back since the fire, but the memory still lived in their eyes. They were Tycho, Mira, and Ren, the cubs Eliara had saved. They whispered quietly, afraid that the walls might hear. "She's down there," Tycho said, pressing his ear to the cold floor. "I can hear her song." "Are you sure?" Mira asked softly. Her small claws gripped her friend's arm. "They said humans don't sing." "She sings," Ren growled quietly. "And I know her smell. The air carries it up through the stone. They lied to us. She's still alive." The cubs had been told that the human had been removed. But cubs remember truth differently. They remember the way her hands trembled while holding them, the warmth of her jacket, the way her voice soothed their fear even when the world burned around them. They could not forget. For many nights, they snuck away from their sleeping dens, following the faint hum that drifted through cracks in the fortress walls. The sound led them to a narrow vent that carried air down to the lower levels, and to the cell where Eliara waited. They listened to her hum, the same melody again and again, the one she used to calm them long ago. Myra's eyes filled with tears. "She's alone." Tycho clenched his small fists. "Then we help her." Ren looked at the thick walls of stone. "How?" "We dig," Tycho said simply. The idea sounded impossible. The fortress was built into solid rock. The lower cells were said to be unreachable from above. But the cubs didn't care. They were young, brave in the way only children can be. They waited until the next dark cycle, when most of the adults went into rest mode and the halls were silent. They gathered small tools, a broken food tray, a bent metal piece, and a glowing bead to light their way. Then they crawled into the narrow air tunnel behind the storage room, The air inside was thick and smelled of metal and dust. The tunnel was small, barely wide enough for them to move. Their fur brushed the sides as they crawled. The light from the bead flickered. Ren led the way. He had the strongest claws. Tycho followed, holding the light. Mira came last, her heart pounding hard enough to hear. Every sound echoed, their breathing, their small steps, the distant rumble of machinery above. They moved for what felt like hours before stopping at a solid wall of dark stone. The air was colder here. They could feel it, a faint vibration behind the wall, like someone moving or breathing. "She's behind here," Ren whispered. Tycho said, and began to dig. In the cell, Eliara sat up. The humming had stopped. She felt something strange, a small tremor in the floor beneath her. At first, she thought it was another drill, or a ship landing above. But then she heard it again, a small rhythmic sound, tap, 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 almost like claws on stone. She pressed her ear against the wall. Her heart raced. "Is someone there?" She whispered. No one answered, but the tapping grew faster. The cubs dug with all their strength. The stone was old and cracked. It took time, claws bleeding, paws aching. But each scrape brought them closer. Tiny flakes fell away, and warm air from the cell began to leak through. "I can smell her," Mira said. "She's scared." "Then we dig faster," Ren said. Hours passed. They took turns digging and listening for patrols above. Sometimes they had to stop when they heard footsteps echoing through the corridors. Guards passed nearby, their boots heavy, their voices cold. "Any sign of movement below?" One guard asked. "Nothing." "The human hasn't made a sound in days," another replied. The cubs waited until the sound faded before starting again. Their claws hurt, but they didn't stop. Inside the command room, Captain Vor stared at a small screen. "Strange," he said to his assistant. "The sensors are picking up small vibrations near the lower tunnels. Could be loose rock. Or," he frowned, "or someone digging. Should I send a patrol, sir?" "No," Vor said. "Not yet. Let's observe. If the human tries to escape, she'll only bury herself deeper." He smirked, thinking the human was weak, fragile. He didn't know that the vibrations were not from her, but from the cubs. Eliara pressed her hand against the cold wall, whispering softly, "Please, whoever you are, don't stop." And then she did something she hadn't done since she was captured. She sang. Her voice was weak, rough, but it carried through the cracks. It was the same lullaby, slow, gentle, warm. On the other side, the cubs froze. "She's singing again," Tycho said. "She knows." The melody gave them new strength. They dug harder, ignoring the pain, ignoring time. Dust filled their fur, but their eyes shone like small stars in the dark. Finally, after what felt like forever, Ren's claw hit something hollow. A thin crack opened, letting out a whisper of warm air. He pushed harder, breaking a piece of stone free. Through the gap, he saw movement, a shadow of a hand reaching out from the other side. "Ren?" A faint voice called. "Is it really you?" He froze. "Eliara." He whispered. "We found you." Tycho and Mira pressed close, their small faces covered in dust and tears. She reached through the crack, her fingers trembling. They touched her hand, warm against their claws. For a moment, none of them spoke. The sound of their breathing filled the silence, human and alien, together again through a wall of stone. But above them, danger was moving. Captain Vor had noticed the vibrations growing stronger. He sent guards to the lower tunnels. "Check everything," he ordered. "Something is alive down there." The cubs heard the alarm lights begin to hum. Red flashes started to fill the corridors above. Ren looked at the small opening they had made. "We're not done yet," he said. "We'll come back tomorrow night. We'll finish the tunnel and get her out." Eliara shook her head. "It's too dangerous. We don't care, Mira said. You saved us. Now we save you. Before the guards could reach the lower level, the cubs covered the hole with loose stone and crawled back through the tunnel. Hearts pounding, Eliara sat by the wall long after they left. Her hands shook as she touched the small crack where their claws had been. For the first time since she was locked away, she smiled, small but real dot in the dark, she whispered. I'm not alone anymore. Above her, 3 small aliens crawled silently back to their dens, covered in dust, hearts full of fire. They had done the impossible. They had reached her dot, and tomorrow night, they would return. Because some bonds can't be broken by fear, or walls, or even entire empires, they were coming for her. And nothing, not even stone, would stop them. The fortress above slept under cold starlight, its towers rising like black spears against the night sky. Only a few red lights blinked through the mist, showing the outer patrol routes. But deep below, inside the mountain's heart, life was moving, quietly, desperately. The cubs had returned. Ren led the way again, his fur still matted with stone dust from the night before. Behind him came Tycho and Mira, carrying small stolen tools wrapped in cloth, a rusted drill head, a scrap of laser wire, and a piece of bread for the human. They had slept only a few hours since last night's digging. But excitement burned brighter than sleep. We made it halfway, Ren said, crawling through the narrow vent. Tonight we reach her. Mira nodded, clutching the glowing bead that lit their way. We have to be careful. Guards were near the tunnels last night. Tycho smiled nervously. We'll be ghosts. Fast, silent ghosts. They crawled deeper, their bodies brushing the cold metal walls. The tunnel grew smaller as they descended. The smell of damp stone and rust filled their noses. Above them, the fortress was quiet, the perfect time to dig Dot in her cell. Eliara sat awake, staring at the same patch of wall where the cub's claws had scratched through. She touched the stone with gentle fingers and smiled softly. They'll come back, she whispered. They're just cubs, but braver than any soldier I've ever met. She had saved them once, small, frightened, coughing in the fire. Now they were saving her. That thought gave her strength. The guards had been more alert today. One had even entered her cell, shining a light in her eyes, muttering, "Still alive, human?" She hadn't answered. If they knew about the noise in the walls, they might seal the tunnels forever. So she waited in silence, pretending to be weak, pretending to give up. But inside, her heart was awake, counting every minute until the scratching returned. Back in the tunnel, the cubs reached the last bend. The air grew warmer, the same warmth they had felt before. Ren sniffed it and smiled. We're close. Tycho started the digging again. The dull drill head scratched against stone, sparks flickering. They worked in turns, using their small claws to loosen the broken rock. Every sound echoed, so they moved slowly. Myra whispered, "She must hear us." "She does," Ren said. "She's waiting." Far above them, Captain Vor sat at his control console, frowning. "Again," he muttered. The sensors had picked up small tremors under Section 9, the same as last night. Too regular to be natural. He called for an engineer. "Tell me what's under that section." The engineer checked the tablet. Storage tunnels, ventilation shafts, and the human cell. Vor's eyes narrowed. "The human?" "Yes, Captain. But the vibrations, they're not strong enough for her to cause them. Unless," Vor said quietly, "she has help." He pressed a button. "Send a patrol, quietly. I want every tunnel checked." The cubs didn't know that danger was already moving their way. They were almost through the last layer of stone when Ren's ear twitched. "Wait," he whispered. "I hear something." The sound came from above, metal boots hitting the corridor floor. Faint echoes of voices. "Search the lower vents," a guard said. "Captain's orders." Tycho's eyes widened. They're coming here. Mira turned off the light bead instantly. Darkness swallowed them whole. The air felt tight and heavy. They crouched low, hardly breathing. The voices came closer, the sound of scanning devices humming through the air. Anything? Nothing yet. Just rock. One guard leaned near the vent opening, sniffing. Strange. Smells like cubs. Ren froze. He recognized the voice. Guard Deck, the same one who had dragged Eliara away months ago. The one who called her animal. The guard paused for a moment, then shrugged. Probably wild scavengers. Let's move. The sound of boots faded away. The cubs stayed still for a long moment before exhaling softly. That was close. Mira whispered. Ren clenched his claws. They'll come again. We have to hurry. They began digging faster, the small tools biting into the stone. Eliara, on the other side, heard the noise and pressed close, whispering through the crack. Be careful. They're searching. Ren's muffled voice replied, We know. We won't stop. Her heart ached. You could be punished. So were you, Mira said softly. For helping us. Eliara smiled weakly. That was different. No, Tycho said. It's the same. Their words warmed her more than any light could. She had been ready to die here, forgotten by her own kind. But these 3 young aliens, these cubs, had given her a reason to hope again. An hour passed. The air filled with dust. The small hole grew wider. Eliara could see their faces now, tired, dirty, but shining with determination. They had brought food too, a small piece of flatbread and a water pack. You brought this for me? She asked softly. Tycho nodded proudly. We took it from the guard's kitchen. Eliara laughed, a sound that echoed gently through the cell. You're going to get yourselves in so much trouble. We don't care, Ren said. You saved us when no one else did. Her eyes grew wet. She took the bread carefully through the opening and broke it in half, pushing a small piece back toward them. Share it, she whispered. Always share. The cubs looked at her, confused but smiling. She was still teaching them, even through a wall. Up in the control room, alarms flickered again. Captain Vor stood slowly. The movement's increasing. It's almost like a pattern. He zoomed in on the seismic map. The lines formed small pulses, not random at all. Get me eyes in the lower level, now. Guards with scanners moved through the corridors. One stopped near Eliara's cell. He pressed his ear against the wall. Sir, he said into his radio. There's something in the rock. It's faint, but it's there. Record it, Vor ordered. And keep your distance. If the human was trying to escape, he wanted her to fail on her own, to prove her weakness. But he didn't know it wasn't her strength. He should fear it was the cubs. Down below, the cubs had made a tunnel wide enough for Mira to slip her arm through. She reached out and touched Eliara's hand fully for the first time. Her small furred fingers curled around the human's palm. You're warm, Mira whispered. So are you, Eliara said. You're all growing. We'll get you out soon, Ren said. One more night and the tunnel will be wide enough. Eliara nodded slowly. Promise me you'll be careful. Tycho grinned. We promise. Cub's word. They didn't know that promises meant something powerful to humans too. For Eliara, that small word lit her soul like sunlight. When the cubs finally crawled back to their dens, the sky was already pale with dawn. They cleaned the dust from their fur, trying to look innocent before the elders woke. But their paws were raw, and their eyes were heavy. That morning, Captain Vor entered the nursery hall himself. He walked among the sleeping cubs, studying their faces. His sharp gaze paused for a moment on Tycho, then Ren, then Mira. His nose twitched. Strange, he murmured. They smell like dust and oil. The caretaker bowed nervously. They play in the tunnels sometimes, Captain. Vor gave a thin smile. Yes, play. He left without another word, but his suspicion had already begun to grow. That night, Eliara sat awake again. Her stomach hurt less after the bread. She felt stronger. She looked at the wall and whispered, "Be safe, little ones." Above in the darkness, the cubs prepared one last time. Ren carried a sharper tool this time, stolen from the repair bay. Mira carried a small map she had drawn in secret, marking the guard routes. Tycho carried courage enough for all of them. When the fortress lights dimmed, they slipped into the tunnel again. The digging was faster now. The tunnel was almost complete. They could see the light from Eliara's cell seeping through the cracks. "Just a few more stones," Ren said, his claws scraping. Then the sound hit. Boots again, louder, closer. "Guards!" Mira hissed. Eliara heard it too and pressed her back to the wall. "Hide," she whispered. "Hide now." The cubs froze as a beam of red light swept across the tunnel entrance. A guard crouched nearby, scanning the walls. "There's a hollow space behind here," he said. "Get the drill." The cubs' hearts pounded. If the guard drilled here, he'd find the tunnel. And them. Ren made a choice. He took a small rock and threw it across the corridor. It clattered loudly on the other side. What was that? The guard snapped, turning. He moved toward the noise. Now. Ren hissed. They crawled back into the shadows as fast as they could. The guard looked around, confused. Must be rats. He walked away. The cubs didn't stop moving until they reached a safe corner. Their bodies shook with fear and exhaustion. "We can't go back tonight," Mira said, tears in her eyes. Ren nodded. "Tomorrow. We'll finish tomorrow." In her cell, Eliara leaned against the wall, whispering through the crack. "It's okay," she said softly, even though they couldn't hear her. "You've done enough." She looked at her hands, dirty, bruised, but trembling with hope. Somewhere above her, 3 cubs were risking everything for her. And though she was still a prisoner, she didn't feel like one anymore, because hope had claws now. And it was digging through stone to reach her. Morning came quietly to the fortress. The sun's pale light barely touched the cold stone walls. Inside, soldiers moved like shadows, preparing for another dull day of patrols. But far below, in the deep belly of the mountain, something was about to change everything. Eliara sat awake, her back against the same wall where she had last touched the cub's tiny claws. She hadn't slept. Every sound in the silence made her heart race. The hum of the vents, the echo of boots far above, the faint vibration of the fortress breathing. She whispered to herself, "They'll come back. I know they will." Her voice trembled with hope, fragile but alive. In the upper dens, 3 young aliens gathered once again in their secret hiding spot. Their fur was still dusty from last night's escape. Ren's claws were cracked and bleeding. Mira's eyes were red with worry. Tico's paws shook as he held a small metal fragment, a stolen key chip he had taken from the guard's belt. "This is the last night," Ren said quietly. "We finish the tunnel," Mira added. "And free her," Tycho whispered. They all nodded. They didn't know that Captain Vor had already tightened security around the lower corridors. He was certain something was happening beneath the fortress, something that smelled like rebellion. He had doubled the guards and locked most tunnels. But one small vent, forgotten behind an old fuel bay, still remained open. The cubs found it. As the fortress lights dimmed into night mode, they slipped inside again. Their paws made no sound on the metal. The tunnel greeted them like an old friend, narrow, cold, and full of dust. They crawled for nearly an hour before reaching the stone barrier. The small hole they had dug before was now half open, the air from Eliara's cell whispering through it. "She's still there," Mira said softly. "Let's finish this," Ren growled. He raised the sharper tool. A laser cutter stolen from the mechanic bay, and began slicing through the rock. A thin red line burned across the stone, filling the tunnel with the smell of heated dust. Tycho worked beside him, clearing the broken pieces. Mira held the light, eyes darting nervously for any sign of danger. The wall began to give way. Inside the cell, Eliara heard the faint hum. She stood up, pressing her hands to the wall. "You're back," she whispered, smiling despite the tears in her eyes. "We promised," a muffled voice answered. Ren's voice. Her heart lifted. She knelt, helping from her side, pulling away pieces of broken stone with her bare hands. Dust filled her hair and eyes, but she didn't care. They were closer than ever. She could hear their breathing now, the sound of claws scratching faster up above. In the control room, Captain Vore stared at his screen again. The seismic lines spiked. "What is that?" He snapped. The technician swallowed. "It's under Section 9 again, sir." The human cell. Vore's eyes narrowed. "Seal the level. Now, send every available guard. No one in, no one out." Sirens blared. Red lights flashed across the halls. Soldiers rushed to their posts. The cubs froze. "They found us," Mira whispered. "Keep digging," Ren said. "We're almost through." The cutter burned brighter, the last layer of stone turning red. Eliara pushed from the other side, her hands bleeding. With a final crack, the wall burst open. A rush of dust and light filled the air. The tunnel connected to the cell. For a long second, no one moved. Eliara stared at the three small shapes crawling through the hole, dusty, tired, covered in scratches but smiling. "Eliara!" Tycho cried, jumping into her arms. She hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. Mira and Ren crawled in next, panting. "You shouldn't have come," Eliara whispered, holding all three. "It's too dangerous." Ren shook his head. "You saved us. Now it's our turn." Alira's chest ached with emotion. "You're just children." Mira smiled softly. "We're your children." The words hit her harder than any prison wall ever could. She hugged them again. Human arms wrapping alien cubs in warmth and dust. But the moment didn't. Last heavy boots echoed down the corridor. Voices shouted commands. "They're coming." Tycho cried. Eliara looked at the hole. "Back! Go back through the tunnel." "Now!" "No!" Ren said firmly. "We're not leaving you." Alarms blared louder. The door of the cell glowed red. Someone was unlocking it from the outside. Eliara grabbed the small key chip Tycho had stolen. "Give me that." She pressed it into the door's control panel. Sparks flew, but the lock clicked open. She turned to the cubs. "Stay behind me." The door slid open with a screech. Two guards stood outside, shocked to see the door move. The first raised his weapon. "Stop!" Eliara reacted without thinking. She threw the metal plate she'd been sitting on for weeks. It hit the guard's helmet with a loud clang, knocking him back. The second aimed, but Ren leapt forward, biting his arm. The alien screamed, swinging wildly. But Tycho tripped his legs while Myra scratched his face. It was chaos. Small bodies, sharp claws, shouts, and flashes of light. Eliara grabbed the guard's stun stick and swung it with all her strength. The electric pulse hit the wall, lighting up the cell. The guard fell. For a moment, silence returned. The cubs looked at her, wide-eyed. "You fought," Myra whispered. Eliara smiled weakly. "Let's just call it surviving." They ran through the hallway, the cubs guiding her through side tunnels. The fortress was shaking with alarms now. Soldiers shouted in the distance. "Left!" Ren said. "Through the vent." They crawled inside the narrow vent system, moving fast. Eliara could barely breathe, but she kept going. The cubs were leading her through a maze of pipes and metal. Behind them, shouts echoed closer. "Seal the vents." The human is loose. Tycho turned back. Faster! They reached an old maintenance hatch that opened into the outer cavern. Cold air rushed in, their first breath of freedom. But before they could move, a bright light filled the tunnel. Captain Vor stood at the entrance, his weapon raised. So it was you, he said slowly, eyes narrowing at the cubs. The traitors. The cubs growled, standing in front of Eli Era. Vor aimed his blaster. Step aside. Eliara stepped forward instead, spreading her arms to protect them. They're children. They're enemies, Vor hissed. Just like you. Ren's voice trembled with fury. You don't understand. She saved us. Vor laughed coldly. And now she'd die for it. He raised the weapon, but before he could fire, the cubs lunged together. Tycho bit his hand. Mira clawed his arm. Ren pushed the blaster away. The shot went wide, hitting the ceiling. Rocks fell from above. Eliara grabbed the cubs, pulling them into the side vent just as the tunnel began to collapse. Dust and smoke filled the air. Vor shouted. Trapped behind fallen debris, they ran. The vent opened into a cave outside the fortress. The night sky stretched above, endless and full of stars. Eliara fell to her knees, gasping for air. The cubs surrounded her, panting. For the first time in months, she felt the cold wind on her face. Freedom. They had done it. Iko laughed, spinning in the dust. We did it. We're outside. Mira hugged Eliara tightly. You're safe now. Eliara looked at them, smiling through tears. No. We're safe. She stood, looking at the glowing horizon in the distance. The forest, the open plains, the unknown world waiting. We need to go, Ren said. Before they find us. Eliara nodded. Lead the way. Behind them, deep inside the fortress, Captain Vor freed himself from the rubble, coughing. His armor was cracked, his weapon gone. He stared at the broken wall, the escape tunnel, the empty cell. His rage burned, but beneath it, something else stirred, confusion. He walked to the small hole in the stone and saw 3 small claw prints beside a human handprint, pressed together in dust. He stood there for a long moment. Silent. Maybe, just maybe, this human wasn't what the Empire said she was. Outside. Eliara and the cubs moved through the forest, their silhouettes lit by twin moons. They walked until they reached a ridge, where the land opened wide and full of stars. The cubs stopped, looking up. Where will we go now? Tycho asked. Eliara smiled faintly. Somewhere free. Somewhere no one calls us wrong for caring. Mira looked at her. Will the others follow us? Eliara turned toward the fortress in the distance, a dark shadow against the night sky. Maybe not yet, but one day. She knelt and wrapped her arms around the cubs. Because kindness is stronger than fear, and love is stronger than walls. The wind blew softly, carrying her words into the stars, for the first time in forever. She laughed not from madness or pain, but from joy. The cubs laughed too, their voices echoing through the valley. A human and 3 alien cubs, fugitives, friends, family. And somewhere behind them, deep within the mountain fortress, cracks began to spread through the Empire's cold heart, not of stone, but of belief.